You don't work for someone. You don't report to an office. You don't check in with coworkers, because it's just you. And for a while, you felt free. But freedom without a system? That's just another word for stuck. You set goals. Then you don't reach them. You stay busy. Yet your pipeline doesn't grow. You meet people, only to never hear from them again. And the worst part? It's only getting worse. You want things to improve, and they can. But it starts with you. MPN is an online accountability group for financial advisors, mortgage brokers, real estate professionals, insurance agents, coaches, and consultants. People who know their profession, but need structure to stay consistent. Every day, 6 disciplines to complete. Every week, 4 steps to follow. Every month, fellow professionals see your commitment. And the outcome? You build yourself. You build your business. You build your network. MPN, where information meets implementation. Learn more at mypersonalnetwork.org.
Hello, my name is Dr. Keith McNally, founder and CEO of the Trail to Transformation Foundation. As a Marine Corps combat veteran, I know firsthand the challenges many veterans face after military service. That's why I founded the Trail to Transformation Foundation, to help veterans find renewed purpose through education, community, and nature-based experiences. To support our mission, please visit givebutter.com/T3Mission.org. Thank you for your support.
Well, welcome back to Mindful Mondays. You know, every once in a while, I get to invite someone on the show who isn't just a guest. They're a friend, a colleague, and someone I've had the privilege of working alongside behind the scenes. Today's guest definitely checks all those boxes. Dr. Keith McNally and I have spent countless hours producing the Trail to Transformation TV show together, and I have had the honor of supporting the incredible work of the Trail to Transformation Foundation. So I can tell you firsthand that what you're about to hear isn't just a mission on paper. It's something Keith lives every single day. He's a U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, educator, author, and founder of the Trail to Transformation Foundation, and he has turned his own journey into one of service, helping veterans reconnect with purpose, resilience, and hope through educational programs, nature-based wellness, community outreach, and his inspiring Appalachian Trail hikes. He's building a movement with one simple but powerful message: no veteran should die by suicide. But I would have to argue that he has 2 powerful messages, because the other one should be no veteran should walk alone. So Keith, it's always a pleasure spending time with you. Welcome to Mindful Mondays.
Well, now I've got to thank you on multiple levels because I'm a guest on your show. This is not the first time. You're producing my show, and so you're helping me get all of the things, the foundational elements to Trail to Transformation Foundation up and running, and really, thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure. You know, I figured it was something easy enough to do to help, and what you're doing, I think, is so important. I mean, being a veteran myself, even I wasn't aware of the numbers of the suicide, and so your mission to put all that on, your journey, what you've been through, for me was just really inspiring, and I just felt it was a way that I could help.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So yeah.
Before you even start, I gotta say, now I'm in my head thinking and watching and listening. Your intro and the music is it's upbeat, it's positive, and I know when you go to mine, and I'm hoping that some of your viewers will kind of jump over and just kind of peruse and see what I got going on T3 TV. It's a bit more somber in nature, and so I might need to. And we're about to jump into season 3. I may need to, rethink about how the introduction happens, so I kind of pull in more viewers.
Oh yeah, we can always change. I kind of like your music as well. I mean, to me, your music is not, I wouldn't say necessarily somber. It's peaceful, And when you have all this crazy, chaotic stuff going around, to me, it's just when you have that little bit of peace, it's always kind of a good start. But as you know, I'll always tell you, it's your show. We're going to do whatever you like and whatever your viewers want. So,
well, right now it's it's relevant to the show because it's relevant to as much as it's about stories and holistic practices for being healthy, staying healthy, maintaining your health, whether it's breath work or meditation or yoga. It's also the stories of resilience, of overcoming trials, tribulations, and those things. And so, and for me, being a Virgo, and I always seem to come back to that every once in a while, it's about being grounded. And so it's about being outside in nature and finding a place where that peace totally does exist. And so for me, it's outside, it's in nature, it's going on very long walks with Ashley, and she's my four-legged trail companion. And so that's kind of where that vibrationally that sits with me. But still, maybe at some point we kind of get the energy up a bit.
Oh yeah, you and I are very similar in that way. As a matter of fact, all my shorts, I used to always try to do them outside because I like being outside with all my trees and everything. But certain, like this time of year, the cicadas are like really, really loud, so it's not necessarily appreciated, all the background noise. But we will definitely do that. So if you've been with us for a while, actually today that we're recording here is 3 years since Mindful Mondays has been running. And I've had the pleasure of having Keith on twice before. This is his third appearance. And normally we are talking about his whole, his journey. As many of you know, he is a 5-time suicide survivor, combat veteran and all that. I would definitely encourage you to go back to watch those episodes because it is a powerful journey and story. But today we want to focus more on your Trail to Transformation Foundation. And what I'd really kind of like to know is what was that defining moment that made you realize the Trail to Transformation Foundation needed to exist? And what gap did you see in the veteran support that wasn't being filled?
Well, to start, this has been an evolution of things. And so as I grow and expand just personally, and as you said, 5-time suicide attempt survivor, and I go on, back in 2021, my 5th attempt, and then in 2022, a year later, a heart attack. I could say this because it's my story. Apparently I'm hard to kill. It's hard for me to die. And I say that tongue in cheek, but at the same time, it always feels relevant to me. There are other organizations out there like Mission 22 and the Disabled American Veterans who have their specific roles in addressing the high suicide rate for veterans. And so kind of a backstory, in 2012, the Veterans Administration published its first, I think, real shocking data that suggested that 22 veterans die by suicide on average. Every day. I think the number is lower. I think we're most recent statistics by the Veterans Administration. This isn't any other organization doing studies on it. That number has dropped to 17.5. We're hoping that's because there's more attention to the crisis, and we will call it a crisis. At least those in my circles call it a crisis. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed. For me, how we got from the evolution of self, staying alive, maintaining health, and all those cool things, to creating this foundation was somebody eventually backed me in a corner and said, if you could do anything, what would you do? What would that thing be? And I said, well, we need to get that number to 0. And so that was the defining moment. Okay, we've identified it. That's the vision. So that's the vision. How do we make that happen? But we need a structure to make that happen. And thus the foundation is being developed as we talk.
Yeah, well, and that's it. Well, it takes a lot of work and stuff to put that together as well. And the fact that you are at that point where you're able to talk about it openly and hoping to connect with others to let them know that there is hope or there's options. Not sure what the correct wording for that is, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage to openly share that, and I think it's one that people need to hear. And the fact that you have gone a step further to create the foundation for it, I think is incredible.
And just to be clear, for people who are now curious as to what is the foundation, what does it do, why does it exist? And so I needed to be real clear is this came from my personal story, of course. And so this was an extension of how am I going to be impactful and in what way can I be impactful in the veteran community and the veterans who have been traumatized by whatever and are dealing with the fluctuations of emotions, whatever psychosis or psychological impact that is. For me, PTSD and psychosis. Or the foundation, I should say, is not designed as a crisis intervention entity. So there's 988, there's 911, 988, the crisis hotline, and there are probably other local, state, and federal supports that if you're in crisis, you need to go in that direction. This is kind of post-crisis. It's not clinical, it's not therapy, we don't diagnose. The goal is to provide community, entry into nature-based experiences, which is where my growth exists, and through education and wellness. So we've got a TV, as you definitely suggested earlier. We have a TV show. That's kind of our throttle forward. But I also want to provide workshops, virtual and in-person, content, media content that talks about what to do if you're in this situation, what to do if you're in this situation, but from an educational perspective. Where are the resources? What resources do I have? And how can I develop the resilience and the camaraderie that we once had, as service members? How can I develop that outside of service, not just within the veteran community, but in the community as a whole? And so a lot of it is really educating both, I call both, the flip side of the coin, both sides of the coin, within the community and within the larger scope, the general community, because people they're fearful, they misunderstand, they have, a stigma. Ooh, can't talk about that, right? And we want to kind of break through those barriers to say, all of us struggle in one way or another. And when we build those relationships, when we build that community, and we pull down the stigma, we're better able to help veterans understand that they're just as normal as anybody else.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is in its infancy, because you just got the foundation,
Yeah.
got your 501c3 for the foundation, what, 3 months ago?
So
Something close to that.
yeah. So time of this recording, we're July of 2026. 2026 is the year for the foundation. So in January, we were incorporated. And then, of course, I went through the process of, the IRS. And literally a week before, so this is back in March, literally like a week to the day that I was going to leave for the Appalachian Trail, drive all the way down to Georgia, I received the letter in the mail. We were awarding you your 501c3 status. And so there are, things I've got to do regarding that. But yeah, so the goal, so that was really cool, right? We get that out of the way. I get to hike the AT for 3 to 4 months. Didn't happen, but maybe by virtue of the universe saying, okay, let's do one thing, get it going, then we can get you back on the trail, which I will in 2027. So since I've been back in April, it's been the building process. So pulling the board back together, laying out what the 3 pillars are: education and wellness, right, where the TV show sits, nature-based experiences, which will probably be like the third thing that we really build, because there's the community engagement piece, which I think is so critical. and I want to do yearly summits, pulling people together in a physical space, having panel member discussions and breakout workshops to kind of really dive deep into how can this community, whether it be where I am, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Virginia Beach, the Hampton Roads area, how can this community really address it? I've got some friends and colleagues in North Carolina. We did a suicide prevention, suicide awareness event called Spark way back in 24. So whether it be Raleigh, Virginia, uh, wherever you are in the world, coming out there, making sure that the local communities are really having an investment in helping, create this space where veterans feel normal again.
Yeah, and that's an important space to have. And I am in Missouri.
All
So
right.
Veterans of the Ozarks, I know, does a lot of work with that too. I belong to Veterans of the Ozarks, and they do a lot of community things as well down here in Branson. But yeah, so since it is in its infancy, and I know kind of your passion. I mean, did part of your passion? I mean, for let's start with this. For one, was there a gap that you were seeing as far as veteran support that wasn't being filled? Is that kind of what sparked this, or?
Part of it is my ignorance of the gap, possibly, because, like I said, there's Mission 22, which is probably the bigger one, Disabled American Vets, which I'm a member of. But there doesn't seem to be, and there are lots of good nonprofit veteran focused organizations that address both clinical and the non-clinical aspects of suicide prevention, and all of it's important. But because it was me and my story, it was what's driving me forward to say, hey, where do I fit into the community that's providing help, support, guidance, and areas where there may be that gap. What I'm always finding when I'm hearing, when I talk to other veterans or watching a newsreel or watching a YouTube video, the one word that constantly comes up is, well, the two words really, stigma and fear. Stigma is we can't talk about this. And that's both from a general perspective. It's very difficult to talk about what actually happens after the fact, if it does occur. If I'm going to use a YouTube word, unalived, because some people have even struggled with the word suicide.
Right.
When a family member or a community member dies by their own hand, it's questioned, what's going on in that situation. Mental health, mental illness, depression, things that we don't normally want to talk about, or we are afraid to talk about because of whatever reason. This only happens to, a certain group of people. It doesn't happen to us. But when you look deeper into the situation, it happens more often than we want to admit. And I always go back to, and this is dating me because I'll be 57 soon. Easily, 30 years ago, when I was living in North Carolina, and I was out of the Corps, so I had, left the Corps, and I was part of a small community, and there's lots of small communities in North Carolina. I was attending a church, and, one day, one of the church members, a young man, beautiful young wife, two beautiful boys, dies, shoots himself. And the entire community is up on its head, but only for a certain amount of time. Since that time, talking to a friend of mine up in Eastern Shore or another friend in North Carolina, when she was in high school kids dying by suicide, somebody's dad dying by suicide, taking their own life. So it happens. We want to hide it. We're afraid of it, but it completely disrupts the system and the subsystems where it occurs because people get angry, frustrated, and they don't know how to process the trauma associated with that. There's a ripple effect.
There is.
And I don't want to go deep into that. That's not necessarily my area of expertise, but it does happen. So it ripples out to the family, generationally, and the immediate family. It ripples out to the community, and that's work, school, church, the general population. And so we want to figure out what's going on, but more importantly, we want to open up those conversations that say, this is traumatizing and I don't know how to deal with it. So we need to get people help. But then for the veterans who are dealing with this issue, such as myself, I always say, and you always tell me don't use the word broken. And I don't necessarily use it to say that there's something wrong with me, but I say it to say, I know that I'm different and I just want to find a way of normalizing my difference and allowing that uniqueness, that thing that makes me special, that area of my life that says, maybe I can go the distance, as we'll talk about, in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Things that I can do to make me feel good about myself.
Yeah, and I think the conversation you and I had, and I can understand you were broken, but was around the thing normal.
Yeah.
Everybody was so worried about being normal, but who's to say what's normal and what's not? We're all abnormal to somebody. So it's what is, to me, it's there's too much weight put on that word as far as normal, and like you have to fit in. I think people have the right to be who they are without judgment. So it's your normal.
And that's critical, and I like that. No judgment zones. We live in a world where there's constant judgment of money, success, career, or whatever. Again, reframing the conversation. What does a life that is purposeful, value-filled, and something that makes you happy? Getting out of bed every morning for me sometimes is a challenge. What can I do today that I can live happy, joyful, fulfilled? For me, that's hiking, and it's walking my dog on very long walks. And so those are the things that I've been able to do to allow myself to be transformed. And that's why, I say trail to transformation. It's very much that area of my life that I want to share with people. And I think I could do it through the foundation.
Yeah. And with your foundations, the mission, we have on there, and we made sure we put on there that no veteran should walk alone. What does that statement truly mean to you? And how do you bring those words to life every day? I know you do by, I know you do by walking with, you have Ashley to walk with, but just tell us what that really means to you.
The thing that gets me to spiral, and the thing that I didn't even know until 2021, was how truly alone that I felt inside. And so there were things that occurred each of the 5 times, but I didn't recognize them until 2021, where if I don't change things, this is going to happen again, and I may be successful when it happens again. One of the things that I noticed was I have created this bubble, this safe space. It's not a real bubble, but this safe space for me to kind of be in and seclude myself from people because I felt abnormal, not normal, a misfit, not really fitting into any kind of real group or community or society, even at large. The first thing that, that came to to my senses was I need to change that. I literally needed to change that perception of myself, and I needed to connect with people. Didn't know how, so we're talking literally not knowing how to form real healthy relationships, good relationships, reciprocal relationships, friendships, collegiate, colleagues, um, the relationship we have, a friendship. So in 2021, 2022, and I always give this perspective, COVID and quarantine, so we are literally isolated from each other. Zoom becomes a thing, virtual meetings become a real thing. The only people that I knew by face and by an about section were the people on my LinkedIn network. So I started reaching out to people. Reached out to people and said, would you like to have a conversation? I was trying so desperately to connect with people, breaking through that shell, breaking through the fear of resentment or rejection is probably the better word. Breaking through all of that, making myself vulnerable, and I'll use the word foolish, because there's many times looking like a fool is a real thing, right? People, not everybody said yeah. People who did say yes were the people who had, not necessarily due to COVID, but due to their own life story, had overcome something. And they wanted to share it. They wanted to share their victory story, even with a perfect stranger, i.e. me. For whatever reason, God, universe, fate, I was connecting with those people, and those people were connecting with other people in kind of that same space. People who intentionally transform themselves. And so for me, what was that like? It was living vicariously first through other people's success stories. That was important because I didn't know how to own my own failures or even what success would look like for me. So I was living through other people's story. Felt good. And I lived there for many years, 21, 22, 23, then 24 was like a transition where I was able to say, ooh, I live with pain. I live with trauma. I live with fear. I live with frustration. I live with overwhelm. And I owned it. I owned that story. I owned what people in my community call the shadow or shadow self. I owned all that and slowly allowed myself to share my story because people were beginning to ask. I usually kind of deflected off of that for many, many years. Deflected, kind of, yeah, I did this, I did that, more from a professional standpoint rather than a personal storytelling. But I began to be okay with it. I began to be okay with my fears, my failures, my frustrations, my trauma. And when I started doing that, it was like something changed in my life. And it changed how I perceived other people. And I think how they perceived me. Like I was becoming more of a person than just this thing on the other side of the webcam. That people were relating to me differently. People were, we used the word authentic. We used the word vulnerable or being vulnerable. Truth in the underlying aspects of the conversation. These things became very real.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see how that, and I think that changed a lot of people too, like you said, along that time with COVID and the isolation with the Zoom. And for some of us that were already sociable, it was kind of hard because it's like, it's like, okay, I love this, but it was great when you could meet people in person too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, everything always has its pros and cons. But you know, when we're talking about healing, though, many people think healing's about treating PTSD, and you and I both know that it's more than that. I mean, that may be part of it, but there's a lot more to it. So, how do you see the foundation helping veterans move beyond that? I know it's in its infancy, but how do you see it helping veterans move beyond the surviving to discovering, to rediscovering purpose, identity, hope?
If you were to say, if someone were to tell me 10 years ago, PTSD, it's written all over you, I would have not known how to respond, because I didn't even know that that was a thing. And my first job after the Marine Corps and after graduating from college was a social worker. So I had studied, I was psychology. I was familiar with the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for mental health disorders and such. I've long since removed from that space. I had an academic, a cognitive, an understanding that these things existed. But for me, what did that look like? Well, Ashley's right here.
Yes, I know. I hear. For those of you that don't know, we do have Ashley with us. You just can't see her on camera. Your service dog. But
The anger outbursts, right? The hypervigilance, the tendency to want to hit things. There was a time in my youth that hitting a wall was a normal thing, So nightmares, all those elements. Now, I never really, if you go online or do any kind of study, it could go into substance abuse, and drugs and all that kind of stuff. That was never kind of my thing. It was very much my inability to manage my responses, my reactions to things. That was very much how PTSD, along with the suicide attempts, rendered or manifested in my life. It was just not knowing why, So not knowing why, and it takes somebody else to kind of say, Keith, we really should have a conversation. And of course, 10, 20 years ago, I never did have those conversations. Older, being frustrated with the cyclical patterns in my life, wanting things to change, I started becoming aware that those conversations needed to happen, right? Because I didn't want to be in the same space. And I think that's the educational part that I want the foundation to bring to the veteran community and the larger community, is not recognizing that how you react and how you respond and all the internal chaos is what people are seeing. People aren't seeing you because they don't know who you are. You don't know who you are. I don't know I didn't know who I was. I was just this responsive young man. Some people call me arrogant. Some people call me angry. And like I said, so I started living in this shell, this bubble, not realizing that there was this person who was, I'm going to use the word again, broken. Not realizing that there were all these puzzle pieces on the floor, and I really didn't know how they all fit together. So if the foundation, if me and the foundation can start being able to approach other veterans and say, hey, not clinically diagnose you, but to say, hey, let's get you to a place where you can be open and honest with yourself so that you recognize the need for change. Then we can move forward. Then we can kind of, let's get you into therapy. Let's get you into an assessment where if medications are needed temporarily, let's get that to happen, right? Always being angry, always feeling that you got to respond in a violent way doesn't really help your situation. Could land you in jail, could land you in other places, could land you dead. Um, but you have to be wanting to change. But until you're educated into why that's important, there may not be any change. And so that's kind of where I want the foundation to kind of, you talk about where the gap might be. That could easily be the gap I fill, is because we live in a world where we're reacting, and God help us. Today's world is always about reaction,
Yeah.
how we're reacting to social and global situations. We can still pull back and say, how should I respond appropriately rather than react negatively to what's going on, either internally or externally?
Well, and that's so true. I think our system is kind of set up in reaction mode instead of, preventative with many things. And like you said, if you can't be open and honest with yourself, then how can you be open and honest with anybody else? It always starts with you. But
It does, but sometimes we don't know that because
no,
it's
we
always about,
yeah.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
we don't see it. I don't. I think there's a lot of people, and veterans included, but almost I think there's many people out there that don't know truly who they are, because we grow up, we go to school, we go get college, we go get a job. You kind of do all the things you think you're supposed to be doing, and you just keep going on this little rat race and going from making one ends meet to the other, and no one's ever slowing down to say, is this really what I wanted to do with my life?
Yeah, and it's not only what you want to do, but it's about, where does my energy reside? I kind of using that word a lot. Where are my passions, my desires, my likes? I say that because my career is not a straight path towards an objective. Like I joined the Corps because my dad was in the Navy. It wasn't about, and the only hero that I had was, again, 80s was Rambo, right? Rambo was this iconic hero, and I know he was a Green Beret, so Army. Um, but there was no, like, I didn't feel ready for college, and nobody in my immediate circle, mom, dad, high school counselor, they weren't directing this path. And I was an A-B student. Like, I could do stuff. I was mentally sharp. I didn't have a path forward. So you can't just, well, at least back in the 80s, 90s, you can't just live with mom and dad.
Right.
They're pushing you out the door one way or the other. So I joined the Corps. After the Corps, I didn't have a path forward there because there were no transition services from the service, right? So my first real job outside of the Marines, I was selling ice cream out of a truck until somebody said, you need to go to college. Well, I decided to go to college, and I'm still in North Carolina. And because I had not done any of the math stuff that I'd done in high school, I failed the math placement test. And so again, not having a strategy, not knowing, not having a path, not having a target, I took the easy way out, which is be a social worker, because you don't need to know math
Right.
to be a social worker. So I got in and out of college in 4 years. What I've been thinking, well, maybe I should get a graduate degree. What graduate? So I go and get a graduate degree in computer information systems. Nothing at all to do with mental health. I got into education. I found that I was pretty good at it, being able to share and break things down and, help other people be successful in a career. So I taught computer information systems and IT, basically. So I got a doctoral degree in education, and it was educational leadership. So there was this intent, possibly, to be an administrator at some point, but I had no administrative experience, I had no managerial experience. So again, this lack of direction, because I didn't know what were my passions, what were my likes, what were my dislikes. I took the It tells you there's inventory tests that you do in college that says we should
Oh,
probably,
SATs
well, not that's to
or
get you into
they have
college.
ACT, SETs. Well, yeah.
There's these like the Myers-Briggs and these other inventory type of tests that tell you where your strengths and weaknesses are, and if you have got a strength here, you should follow this trajectory, whatever that is. They never really helped, right? So it's like, what do you do when you don't know you? What do you do with you when you don't know who you are?
Well, and that's one thing the military does well. You learn to adapt and overcome.
Oh,
You
that,
adapt
yeah,
to anything. It's funny that you mentioned that because my degree that I was going to college for was computer information systems when the Air Force told me I was going to be an aircraft electrician. And since I was on the delayed enlistment program, I took a semester of electronics before I went in because I didn't want to go in like not knowing anything. So,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And I went into the infantry not having shot a gun before, so it's like. But the issue is then coming back to there has to be a point where you make the decision to figure out who you are. And I think if the foundation can help veterans come to that decision, figuring out who they are, and finding a safe place to do that through community, through education, through the TV show, and through nature, which is really where it all kind of pulls together. Nature is a place that you could not be distracted. I'm looking for better words, but you could go and you could kind of ground, you could center, and these are kind of words used in my circle. But it's really a place where you could be silent and think and make decisions about yourself, to get to know yourself in a very real way. And I think when veterans are able to do that, despite the trauma, despite the confusion, despite all the backstory, the negative backstory, and they can make positive decisions in their life, I think that's where the foundation is going to really prove itself, is being helping guide those situations, those decision makings. Um, Again, it's a reflection of my journey because I'm in that journey now, and I'm now in this time of my life because I was intentional. Dude, you need to, it took somebody else to say, dude, you need to get into therapy. Well, guess what I did? I got into therapy.
right.
Um, you need to talk to this person who, may be a yoga master. What these connections were helping me do was broaden my understanding of one, the world, and two, myself. That because, like I said, when you live in a bubble, you only see to the bubble.
Right.
You only see a certain aspect of reality, not knowing how big the reality can really be, how much potential you can really have. When I decided to break through the bubble, like a bird, little pecks at a time, getting out there, seeing the light come in. Oh man, you get to make some really cool decisions about yourself. And you can be intentional about those decisions, not just like I said, I don't know what to do now, so let me, trying to find a metaphor for making a bad decision. I don't have one. Um, but you can start making good decisions because one, yourself. And I always say that, I always come back to that because without that, you are just literally responding to whatever external stimulus is out there. It's the internal. It's, ooh, I don't like that. Like, for example, I was a social worker, and this is not degrading the role and the need for social workers. I hated every minute of it.
Right.
That wasn't me. It was like I hated every minute of being to the point where I didn't even want to get out of bed. Towards the tail end of that, and I need to change. But if you don't know these things, and you don't assess your likes, dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, You can make bad decisions all the time. I don't want to make bad decisions anymore.
Good point. It's very true because there's so many people that just feel like they're stuck and they keep doing it, but they haven't, assessed the situation or looked for alternatives. And yeah, you got to do what fits you. I mean, I've always had a big heart, and everybody thought I'd be such a great caregiver, and I'm like, but I don't want to be a caregiver. I don't, I help the way I can, but to be in a situation where people are like constantly at the end part of their life is not me. I'm like, I can't do that. That I have to protect that space, and not drain all my energy. Because that's hard on me. So that's just not something. It's not that I don't care. I do, but it's something that drains. So being able to assess those situations and do that. But so yeah, you've pretty much have touched on them. So your foundation offers the educational media, which is basically the Trail to Transformation TV show, right?
Well, that's one of it.
Well,
So
part of it.
because you were so gracious with your time, it was the one thing that we could kind of get up and run and use as kind of a litmus test as to how we're going to move forward, right? But so the foundation has three general pillars. It has education and wellness media program, where the TV show fits under. It has nature-based experiences, which will develop once there's money and there's time to develop them. And then there's the annual community engagement, which I call a summit. And I used the Spark event in 2024 with Cheyenne Kramer, her husband, and Rick Mead. We did a live, and it was a live stream on our Facebook, but it was actually in-person live. And so at the time, I was the host of the Envision Speaker Series. So it was a podcast before the TV show many years ago. And it was a panel member discussion. We had 7 or 8 members on the panel, and it was people who had been impacted or in some way where suicide was part of their life. And so we needed to have that addressed as a preventive awareness measure. And so that's the other thing I want to do. I'm going to do annual events. But what we want to do under the education and wellness program is, again, workshops, retreats, virtual and in person, but really use the TV show as kind of this is our media outlet where I can pull in subject matter experts to talk about holistic healing, wellness. Again, we're not trying to diagnose or treat, provide alternatives to getting in touch with your internal self, helping you realize that there's more than just responses or reactions to the world, helping you, again, not being the subject matter expert myself, but having worked with and learned from people who do breath work, or people who know yoga, or people who do meditation, or people, and I'll say it because it's my TV show, people who use magic, things that are out, systems that work to help people bring a sense of fulfillment, wholeness, peace. God, that's such a big word. And just awareness, and that's the other word I like to use, so I'm using it more often, is just awareness of self. Because once you get that, I think, man, life just opens up. Again, this is just from experience. Like until the TV show sat for 12 months. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to use it properly. And then I asked you, would you help me produce it? You said yes. And we are creating something that is fantastic. In 3 months, we went from, a little over 7,000 viewers to over 8,000 views.
Yeah, and I know I
3 months.
introduced you, but I had no idea you had started it and that it had sat that long until I got that email from about Christmas time,
Yeah.
checking in to see how I was doing and help, please. I'm like, okay, what we got going on?
We got nothing. We got
Yeah.
nothing. I didn't know how to use it. Not only did I didn't know how to use the infrastructure, what we're working with now, but I didn't have a vision. And so once the vision, once I said I had that conversation, what would you want to do? we got to get that number to zero, right? So once that was like, bam, everything else lines up because now you've got something to work towards. Now the TV show makes sense. Now the foundation makes sense. Now the AT as it relates to the foundation makes sense. It all comes together.
Yeah, and if nothing else, this is a good lesson or open eye opener for people that are thinking about starting a nonprofit because it's not as easy as just pop one up. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of vision, a lot of steps in there. And we're almost out of time, so we're definitely going to have you back for the second part because we really need to dig more into also the foundation of what's going on with it, who you're looking for that can help you grow and expand that foundation as you envision it. So, but yeah, so to tie up, we've got a couple minutes left. Maybe you can give us a little bit of snippet of what is your next step.
How much time do we have?
You got about 4 minutes.
Okay. So one of the things I really wanted to align was the Appalachian Trail through hike. So that's still a passion of mine. That is kind of where I find myself in many different ways, both physically, spiritually, cognitively. It's a place I want to be, I'm connected to. And even though I wasn't successful, I won't use the F word, failure. Even though I wasn't successful of completing the third hike in 2026, my time out in Georgia this year was really educational in terms of how do we do it? How do we do it better? How do we do it successfully? So when I met with my board of directors, they wanted me to be clear as to this wasn't just a vanity project because I want to go and hike the Appalachian Trail every year as a signature event for the foundation. It's also personal. I do want it to be a personal accomplishment every year. But I see it as, real quick, the movie Rocky came out in 1976, so December 3rd, 1976. The world of cinema changed. For me, at least. The reason this movie is so valuable to me, even though I cry every time I watch it, because there's aspects of it, I think, in all of us, and especially with veterans who struggle with whatever trauma they're dealing with. They no longer feel whole, but they no longer feel respected because we lose that uniform. Even if we're broken in the uniform, we still have an identity, we still have a value, we still have a community, we still have a camaraderie. We pull all that off and we're just ourselves. I pull that off and I'm just me. But being broken means I don't have respect for myself. I don't know how to acquire it. In the movie Rocky, he's given the opportunity to fight the heavyweight world champion. Knowing he can't win, doesn't have the skills, the endurance, or the experience in that environment. I don't have any of those on the Appalachian Trail. I just have limited experience. But I know if I can step on the trail and go from Amicalo Falls entry point to Mount Katahdin, I've accomplished something spectacular. It's meaningful to me. It's meaningful to people around me. There's going to be support. There's going to be the applause, the cheerleaders. But I have earned something for me that nobody else can give me, and that's respect. Rocky did the same thing. He survived 15 rounds with the heavyweight champion, did not get knocked out. I know it's cinema, but there's a reason for that to occur because typically the hero of 1,000 faces, the hero's journey, is that at the end of it all, the hero wins, accomplishes whatever task was given to him, and returns home changed. That never happened to Rocky. He didn't win. He survived. In his own words, all he wanted to do was go the distance. All I want to do is go the distance. I want to survive. I don't have to win. I don't have to be the fastest, carry the most weight. I just need to walk it. I need to walk all 2,200 miles of the AT. And I have earned the respect for myself. And I think other veterans can relate. And so if I can do it, they can do it too. But we just need support to do it. And that's what I want to do. I want to build support around that, literally, figuratively. Like there needs to be a support vehicle that follows us along because
which we're going to have to dig into next time because we're
let's
almost,
do it.
I
Let's
know,
do
so
it.
we've got a lot to go through. And I will absolutely say, I absolutely do respect the fact that you did that, not even once or twice. You didn't give up, tried to regroup, but it was a lesson learned. It was not a failure. So I look forward to continuing this conversation. And everybody, we will see you next Monday.